But to answer your question now, the guy that I'm most excited to watch as a Brown who's new is Andrew Billings. And the reason why, number one, we don't have Sheldon Richardson anymore. So he fills a void that we obviously need to have. That's a critical void for us. I think that Jadeveon Clowney is going to be more, he's going to soak up more of, from a run defense type guy than he is going to be attacking the quarterback. Although I think he will get his there as well, because he's going to have Miles on the other side. So as long as he stays healthy, he's going to have opportunities, but he's going to be a run stopping, defensive lineman. He may even play interior quite a bit, but Billings is a monster human being. And he just is. One of my very close friends played against him in college. And I remember I asked him, I was like, who he played at Texas and Arkansas. So like two big programs, right? And I was like, who's the biggest guy and the scariest guy that you ever had to face from a defensive line? He said, this was before the Browns got him. He said, Andrew Billings by far. So I think Billings is untapped NFL potential. All right. He's a guy that was who opted out last year because of COVID. And to be honest, I don't really have an issue with that with him for a couple of reasons. One, he's a larger guy, and COVID happens to affect larger people in different ways, breathing wise, everything like that. Number one. Number two, there was no guarantee he was going to make the team last year because we had Sheldon Richardson. We had guys in that role. Now that Sheldon's gone, and there's no way we're going to pay Sheldon Richardson the kind of money that he was wanting to make again. There's absolutely none. So I think Billings is a guy who's going to be just an interesting guy to watch. He's not going to show up on the stats sheet in any sexy kind of way, but he's going to be like that beast interior. And all we have to do is just have an immovable force in the middle, like a big body, to allow our defensive ends to go in and attack. So I'm excited about him. And I know that's a little bit probably different than most people because we have so many freaking stars on this team. For sure. It's a weird thing to say, still getting used to that. The fact that we have stars all over our team. But yeah, what about you guys?
Jeff, you want to start this one off?
I think I'm going to stick with the defensive theme just because this was a player who I didn't know a whole lot about until we got him, but putting the pieces together and then with some other people that we got in free agency and just the research I've done since we've acquired him, I am most definitely looking forward to watching John Johnson III play the most in this Browns defense, just because Justin will tell you more than anybody, nobody made me more mad on that team last year than Andrew Sendejo. And I know that there's a lot of Andrew Sendejo. There was a nice fan base for him just because he was like a walking, touchdown basically. Mm-hmm. But just because that position is shored up now, hopefully John Johnson really does everything for me. I think that he's going to be a defensive leader that you didn't see on this roster last year, outside of Myles Garrett and outside of Denzel Ward, the games that he was on the field. But now we have a defensive leader at every position, at every tier level of the defense. We have someone out there who I'm sure Joe Woods puts his trust into every day at practice, and who's going to put Joe Woods is going to put his trust into all of those guys every single time that we step onto the field. But John Johnson III is somebody who I think he could be the best safety in the AFC North. That's a hot take for sure. But I think that this defense is going to foster unbelievable safety play. I hope that's what Joe Woods is going for. I hope that Grant Delpit, really blossoms and he gets a lot from John Johnson III. And that's probably the last thing with him. I think that he could bring more benefits. He could be a bigger asset off the field and even in practice compared to the games. I think that he could make everybody in the back end of that defense exponentially better than they were last year, even our cornerback room for that sake.
like that you guys are staying defense because it opens up for me to go to the offensive side of the ball, which I'm usually not the
special teams.
Yeah. Well,
Jamie Gillen,
Jojo Natson, maybe. No. Sticking to the wide receiver room, though, I'm gonna go with probably one of the more controversial players on our team, probably the most controversial, Odell Beckham Jr. And so, obviously, big star, like Michael was saying earlier, have a lot of those guys, but my thing with Odell is I'm not even like one of his biggest fans in terms of this team and like what he could potentially do. But when you think of the potential he has in games that in seasons that he has just played 12 games at the minimum, which he's done twice, he's had over 1,000 yards. His first season with us, he had over 1,000 yards. Granted, we were throwing the ball a ton just because Freddie Kitchens was calling plays, or who knows, Todd Monken was calling the plays. But I digress. Odell, I followed him on social media a lot just because I follow a lot of the Browns players on social media, but his work ethic and the time that he got injured and coming back to where he is now has just been one of the most incredible stories that I've watched in terms of an athlete recovering. It reminds me of the guy from Washington last year who his name is Alex Smith. Just watching guys come back from such, season-ending injuries and being able to work their way back to where they are, having Jarvis and building the Browns just kind of like follow those guys, follow Odell and what they do to get back. If Odell can tap into the potential that he has shown in New York and where he showed in our first season with us, and, we really get cracking with the offense, week 8 comes around, and I think that's when we start to hit our stride last year, and Odell's out. I think that's so unfortunate. But if you look back to Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota with Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, I think the makeup for what that receiving core did in Minnesota is very similar to what they could do here in Cleveland, with Jarvis being the reception guy and Odell kind of being your big play guy. So obviously I'm hoping for a lot here. I'm hoping that the Baker and OBJ connection actually hits off like we all wanted it to. But for me, Odell's kind of that standout star that I think could make a real impact on our team this year.
So we got big man Billings, we got JJ3, and we got OBJ. That's pretty good variety. But I just think that's how exciting this roster is, that you can literally point to any unit of either side of the ball, and you could say, I mean, obviously everybody's ecstatic and excited to watch the team as a whole. That's a given, but just having players at every position on the football field is something that we are not used to. And it's something that I'm going to like getting used to, hopefully that we could talk about this for, years on end in this manner.